What's up, guys? This is Zombie Possum, and today I'm going to be showing you a quick time lapse of a female head that I created. Now, this is my first video where I've actually had any commentary to, so if you would bear with me as I get used to speaking on record about my art and discussing these things that I'm still very insecure about as I continue to grow as an artist and as a creator. I'm still learning here. I'm going to make mistakes on stream. I'm going to make mistakes in the videos, and actually encourage you, if you're someone who feels like that they can eyeball a mistake, then please do leave a comment below. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me where I can improve, because that's what this is all about. So let's get started. Okay, so what you see here, obviously I've started to create the head. I started with a basic sphere, UV sphere, and did some, I think I added a subdivision modifier to that, and up the levels to, I think, level 4. And from there, did some basic topology tweaks here, using the grab brush to move things around and kind of get that basic shape of a head. I also pulled out the neck to just give the head a little bit of orientation in space compared to a relative to where the body should be. Now what you can see now is I'm just kind of getting in some basic ears. I like to do this early. I learned so much from some of the great YouTubers and instructors online on how to do some of this stuff, and I'm still learning every day. But one of the things I noticed they do very quickly in their sculpts is to establish those pieces like the ears and the eyes. And you'll see I'll do the eyes pretty soon. To continue to establish that form of the head, those natural shapes and anatomy that you as a consumer of art and a consumer of these streams will want to have. So I start on the ear, and you'll see very quickly I'm going to do the eyes very shortly. I'm working on the nose right now, and what I'm doing right now is I'm working with some fairly low topology. I'm using the dynamic topology feature in Blender to kind of up the mesh resolution, where as I work in different areas, but you're basically starting with some fairly low resolution efforts to get those basic shapes before you begin to add detail later in the process. You can see I had the eye there, and you'll see that I take a couple of different attempts at creating an eye here. I still haven't nailed down the approach that I like best. I've seen with Darren Lyle as a guy who I really like, and you'll see his videos on YouTube if you do a little quick search. You'll see he has one approach to creating the eye where he is really building towards that final version of the eye that is going to be textured and retopologized as part of a figure, and then ultimately animated. And then there's the approach that I took here, which is a little bit simpler. Doesn't use doesn't use the geometry to define the pupil, but this is simpler, and for sculpting is not a big deal. And if I want to do something more detailed with the eye later, I can always swap that out, because that eye is a separate object. And here you can see I'm adding additional details to the nose and the areas around the nose and the center of the face. I did a lot of 2D art before I got into 3D modeling, and with any sort of art, there are certain regions of anatomy, and specifically the face, that draw the eye naturally. As humans, we look to the center column of the face. We see the eyes and the nose and the mouth before we see anything else. So it's very important that you spend a lot of time focusing on getting these areas of the face absolutely right. If you watch some of the other great YouTubers on Blender and sculpting in general, you'll hear them say it time and time again that you don't want to use the mirror modifiers and symmetry features in Blender when you're talking about, or when you're working on the center areas of the face, because it jumps out to the consumer of the art that everything is entirely symmetrical. So you'll see me turn the symmetry on and off throughout the process to gain a little bit of a variance, if you will, in the topology of that center column of the face. Yeah, eyes are one of the things I really struggle with. This is actually one of the first sculpts I've done where I used a reference for the eye. Which might sound a little hilarious, because I couldn't stress enough how important it is to use a reference with anatomy, especially as you begin to learn and get your grasp of, musculature and skeleton features and things like that. Use a reference. It makes a world of difference. I'm going to post this video, or not this video, but the result of this sculpt rather, to my sketchfab, and you'll see on there with my previous sketch, and the difference in just refinement and physical attractiveness, if you will, of the model. Night and day difference in regards to eyes, specifically the nose, the lips. You should definitely you should definitely, without question, use references whenever possible. It just will improve your art significantly. And you may get to a point down the road, and I think many great artists do get to this point where it's less important. But when you're learning, don't put yourself behind a barrier by saying, "Hey, I'm not going to use a reference because I'm too good for that," or "I don't want to use that crutch." That is a necessary learning tool, and you should use it. So you can see me adding additional details here. I made the nose more slender. I'm not sure why I ended up with such a wide nose at the get-go, but I broke it down a little bit, and I widened the mouth. And you'll see here, I just lowered the nose some, and I think I lowered again some more to, I guess, just close the gap between the nose and the mouth. There was, I won't say an unreasonable gap, but an uncommon gap between those two. You see me work around the eyes and the lips a lot, trying to create that distinct edge. Specifically, if you look at the mouth and the eyes, where the eyelashes are in the eyes, and then also where the mouth, the edge of the lips. When you look at, say supermodels or classic beauties, if you will, the mouth is such a distinct piece of anatomy that it's to me it's very hard to get those rigid and defined edges that are necessary to draw those pieces of anatomy with distinction. But you can see I've gotten a little bit of distinction here, and I'll get a little bit more before we're done. But so you can see here so I just masked out the mouth, and this is again an effort to lower the nose a little bit because there was just too much space between the mouth and the nose, and widening the mouth again to just create that more realistic proportion. Lots of smoothing here. The smooth brush is absolutely fantastic tool to create that pleasing surface of the skin. The brushes and Blender, and really any sculpting tool, kind of create this kind of sculpty feel, and if you want to create something more refined, you got to use that smooth brush. I'm holding down Shift. I want to apologize. I had the show. There's an add-on for Blender that allows you to show the keys, and you'll notice it comes in and out on this video because I forgot to enable it in different recording sessions. This entire sculpt took about, I would say, 170 minutes roughly. I say that only because this video is sped up by 10. So look at about 2.5 hours of sculpting time overall. And this was spread out over a couple of days because I do have a real job and a day job, and also like to play video games and hang out with my family and kids. But yeah, 2.5 hours roughly, which isn't remarkably fast, and I would like to get faster. I certainly made some mistakes that even I can identify. You'll see here in a few moments. I don't even know what the problem was, in fact, but you'll see. Oh, actually, real quickly, this is me just making an elephant ear out of the ear that was there. I ended up saving that, but not using it. But it was a fun little distraction. But you'll see in a moment, I begin kind of trying to change the anatomy around the eyes and the nose and kind of where they connect. And then I just really struggled with some sort of weird, I want to say bug, but I suspect it wasn't a bug. It's more of me not understanding something wrong with the topology or the tooling. But when I was using my smooth brush, it was creating this odd, bumpy texture that was really the opposite of smoothing, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why. And I went back to an earlier version of the model that I had saved, and didn't have that problem, which indicates to me there's probably a problem with the topology, but I don't know what the issue was in the end, and I just kind of walked back and redid some of the work. You'll see me jump forward and backwards here briefly. Hopefully I didn't cut it out, since I've talked about it now for a good 40 seconds. But, oh yeah, there it is right there. So you can see I'm using this smooth brush there and just over and over again and not getting this bumpiness to go away, and in fact making it worse at times. And I could not figure out what the deal was. And maybe one of you who are watching this can tell me what I was doing wrong. But I would, interestingly, I would use the clay strips brush elsewhere and smooth, and had no issues. So I cut that out, the section where I fixed that, but I'm not sure what the issue was there. So you can see here I'm creating some eyelashes. This was an interesting endeavor. There's certainly a couple different ways to do eyelashes in Blender or any 3D modeling tool. If you're going to use this model for animation, you almost certainly don't want to use this method. You'll see that this is a very tedious method that, while it didn't take a remarkably long time, and in fact the better I get at this, the less time this will take. You're not buying yourself anything here. The topology, I want to say that these eyelashes accounted for some 200,000 polys. Obviously you're not going to animate this version of the model anyway, but even if you were going to retopologize, I'm not even sure how you would try. Now the other approach to this is to create a plane that you texture with a two-sided texture and alpha transparency, and create I won't say the illusion of eyelashes, but create eyelashes without a great deal of topology, and that's much more friendly to the GPU. But you can see here I'm creating individual eyelashes that for a unrendered model don't look too bad. I think they're a little thick. I could have done a little bit better job on this, but I got quickly involved in the process of creating these individual, or duplicating these individual lashes and then moving them around and rotating them, that by the time I realized that they were too thick, I was too deep in the process and wasn't willing to come back and change it. So now I'm engaging in the process of putting all these together so that they're one object that I can then duplicate, or not duplicate, but use a mirror modifier to put it on the other eye. That's a pretty tedious process, but again, not overly much. It probably took about 2 minutes or so once I was done placing them all. And so you can see I created I used a mirror modifier to put those over there. Now, just real quickly, for those who are watching who might be interested in using this technique or something like it, all I'm doing here is I'm creating a cube, going into edit mode and setting and then merging all the vertices to center. So you can do that by hitting Alt-M and put, I believe, at center from the context menu. And that merges all the vertices in the cube to a single vertice that you can then extrude out. And then what I'm doing is I'm adding a skin modifier. And then once you add a skin modifier, you actually get, at least with this approach, you'll get 3 or 4 or however many vertices you extrude out to, boxes effectively on, or cubes rather, on this line that you've created. And you hit Control A to reshape or scale any of those. And if you hit A for all and select all of them before you hit Control A, you can scale them all down. And then if you rewind a little bit, you'll see that I scaled the ones at the front further down so that they feel that they taper to a point. Yeah, it's like I said, it's an approach that is great, I think, for the process of sculpting a character, but it's not really reasonable for creating a character that you will retopologize. So that's that. I had some problems with the ears, and I actually didn't merge them in. I intended to, and there was issues. So I'm going to remake those. But I hope you've enjoyed this. If you would, like and subscribe. Take a look at some of my other videos, and hopefully I'll be adding some additional videos on this in the future. So thanks for joining me, and I'll be back soon.